believe I'll try an economics video. Been a little bit of a while, and people are requesting it and all that kind of crap. So what the hell? I'll go over it real quick again. You know, just the basics. So I did a little math last night or this morning, whenever the fuck it was. Anyway, and as I approximated out, the American people owe, in terms of debt, federal debt. That's just federal debt. This isn't personal debt, which is also a preposterously huge number, maybe twice as big as this number. But anyway, they owe 1 billion man-years of labor. 1 billion man-years of labor. That's 1 billion people working an entire year to pay back the debt. I mean, it's just a huge number. 1 billion. So that's everybody in America working for 3 years full-time. Yeah, it's just a gigantic number. And so this whole wealth thing is just disgusting. This debt thing is stupid. You know, money is a good idea. Guaranteed contract paper, good idea. You know, being able to efficiently make deals with each other, agreements, and have them rock solid, paid in advance. Essentially, that's what money allows us to do, is pay in advance. In terms of, like I say, I'll do this for you, you do that for me. So, you know, and those things have gotten very indirect, but it's basically the same exchange. We're basically saying to each other, I'll help build your house, you help me build my house. Instead, we're saying things like, I'll help engineer the bridge, you help give me better internet access. That kind of thing. Because we're working very different jobs. But those are the only productive jobs. The rest of the jobs are just idiot jobs. And so when people say the rich create jobs, it's just nonsense. They waste our labor. They pay us to manicure their toenails, to indulge their nonsense, to have million-dollar birthday parties. They squander labor. And productivity of the real workers, the ones doing real functional jobs that everybody depends on, infrastructure jobs, the kind of work that even welfare recipients encourage, because that's what they spend their money on, food and water and heat and housing. Those kind of jobs end up having to pay essentially the salary of the people doing the wasted labor, the yacht building and the, you know, manicuring of the bushes on the estate property that, you know, 10 people in a year will even look at, let alone gain enough pleasure from to justify the wasted labor and the diminished wages that the real worker is receiving, because he has to pay essentially the salary of the waste worker. So every time somebody builds a Hoover Dam, that worker is creating productivity well in excess of his labor, and vice versa, contrarily, the person doing the waste labor for the rich, who's being contracted into waste labor, has to be paid out of that productivity. There's productive jobs and, as I've stated, waste jobs. There's jobs that are too high a risk, too much deprivation and harm imposed on the employees for the productive value of what is produced. These are real equations in the real world, and all of this is being engineered because we think rich people are a good way to funnel our investment contracts through. That somehow we should have the rich decide what are good investments. And they're going to decide based on their own interest, and their own interest is to do nothing and get paid as high a salary as possible. I won't go into even the details of it, but the very idea of taxing capital gains at half the rate you tax the income from real labor is just insanely stupid. They're both income derived. And based on the tax rate, we'll decide what you get more of. So essentially, you're automatically guaranteeing the rich get richer and the worker gets poorer. To pay the rich getting richer. The rich can't, the only generator of productivity or value is work, substantially. That's it. That's what money equals. People keep saying money equals debt. No, money equals work. It can be converted, just as I converted it. There's an amount of work required to pay back the debt. And that's what it basically equals. So every time somebody wastes money, they're wasting labor. Every time they frivolously or spend money on nonsense or bullshit and they encourage its production, they oblige productive workers to pay that salary of that waste worker. And that's the sum of the game. You know, it's a closed system. You can measure the ins and outs, and the only in of value is the value added. Even gold has no intrinsic value. The value is in the fact that you have to mine it out of the ground. Work has to be expended to produce it, to make it usable, to realize its existence. I'm not saying it's not possible for intrinsic value to fall from outer space, but generally speaking, value is created by energy expended. These are the equations. And there's good equations and there's bad equations. Just in the energy game, there's good investments and bad investments. If you have to put $2 into something and you only get $1.89 back in energy, that's called running a deficit. That's not a good expenditure. You're getting back less than you put in. You want to have a return, a gain, created, advancement, progress, surplus. And the things that build that are value labor, labor that produces beyond its compensation. So for an employee to be productive, he's got to be capable of producing beyond his compensation, beyond what he gets paid. And the benefit of that should go to society as a whole and not be squandered and wasted by these rich bastards, excuse my French, who squander the money on schemes and rackets and all their little limited liability corporations and their all their escape hatches and parachutes and nonsense that just creates waste in our economy. Even capitalism is hugely wasteful in spite of people's delusions. Every time you see an empty warehouse, that's wasted industry. Value of work went in and nothing's coming back out. Bankruptcies are expensive. You know, the waste in terms of merchandise destroyed is, you know, huge. Labor displacements are expensive. Anytime you force a worker to move from one job to another job, you incur an inefficiency expense. You create friction, because now it has to be retrained, reacclimated. It'll break things, it'll do things wrong. It has to become efficient. And all of those things are blights on the economy. Redundancy is a huge blight. You only want to have enough to protect you from, you know, catastrophic environmental disaster or something. But any redundancy beyond what is sensible insurance against catastrophe is a waste. It's friction again. You don't want to have any wasted energy, any wasted effort. And capitalism wastes and squanders tons and tons of it because of this invention of bankruptcy, this invention of no accountability, where people can buy a share and collect profits, and they can even do things that are preposterously illegal, and all they're liable for is the money they invested. They're not liable for the real price of the damage they create. So they can create infinite damage, and they always have limited liability, which is just bullshit. So they're just protecting their wealth, protecting themselves from the real risk equation. And what's the point of that? What's the point of paying them for taking a risk when you're going to give them a parachute that protects them from the risk, the real risk, and only allow a portion of the risk to affect them? The whole risk has to affect, or you don't have a free market or a fair capitalism or anything else. The whole idea that none of this needs to be regulated is just preposterous, because with power, with money, power does come from this control of money and wealth. That's the mechanism. That's what keeps keeps them in power, because they can manipulate markets and pervert the game. They can cheat the rational mechanisms that might be theoretically useful in preventing the exploitations. Just looking for a place to maybe put the camera here. Alright, so I'll come back to you later. Alright, I'm back. There's no fish in there though. So it'll just be a nice video of murky water. That'll be cool. I gotta find fish. I gotta find wildlife again. Must be somewhere. Really is sad. The native biology really has declined horribly. Anyway, except for the spiders and the snakes. Yeah. Oh, that's better. Whew. Shouldn't have had the sun behind me. It doesn't help. Even though it's not much of a sun. Anyway, yeah. So there's always a cost to benefit analysis, and even in labor, even in a rich man's contribution, all of these things can be measured and understood, and the things that are intrinsically unproductive should be discouraged with taxation, and the things intrinsically productive should be encouraged by less taxation. So workers should be taxed less, loafers should be taxed more. It just makes logical sense. And again, people just don't even understand what the real problem is. Wasted investment, fraudulent investment, migrating surplus labor, which capital is. It's a IOU for labor. When you squander that on bullshit investments, rackets, nobody gains, nobody wins, because it's all just fraud, just to aggrandize a few individuals. They get to steal some of the goodies, and nobody wins. Society loses big time. Most of the other investors lose big time. It's just a big loss. But that's the kind of thing we've encouraged, because there's little risk to the behavior. Very few go to prison. Very few pay for it. The consumer pays for it. The state of California pays for it. Some other entity pays the bill. And that entity usually trickles down to Joe Six-Pack. The basic average worker doing productive labor is the guy that pays for all of it. And that's just hugely unproductive. And the most efficient of the consumers are the poorest consumers. They buy infrastructure, and infrastructure is what we want to encourage people to work in. That we all benefit from. Efficient, mass-produced infrastructure is good for all of us. Huge benefits to that kind of expenditure. So that money is essentially never damaged. That investment capital that goes into the hands of a person who buys, for example, cable TV or other infrastructure that everybody enjoys is essentially unwasted money. It's completely productive in that it only passes through people's hands, and it's untainted, it's undiminished in terms of its value. Where if you're building a yacht that only a dozen people will ever enjoy, there's a huge waste of labor, a huge waste of resources, social cost, waste of fuel, all kinds of unproductivity associated with that expenditure. And even though on a small scale, some employees benefit because they have a job as individuals, the whole society loses jobs because the money is wasted on that nonsense instead of spent on productive infrastructure that all of society would have benefited from. Instead of paying people to do productive labor, you've squandered the money on unproductive labor. It really is that simple. It's a bad investment. It's a gimmick, a racket, it's pie in the sky. It's like me saying I have cold fusion. Give me $1 trillion and I'll make electricity for the world. Well, what if I can't do it? Well, then I'm just going to squander $1 trillion. I'm going to waste $1 trillion worth of labor and produce nothing. And that's the average rich man's participation in our economy. It's all a big fraud and a lie. We don't need them. They don't create anything but parasitic disease. They're disease-spreading leeches. It's just basic logical economic theory. We should prove it by locking all the rich up for a week or two in jail, and then we can just demonstrate their contribution is nothing. They're useless sacks of shit, and they are self-aggrandizing propagandists and liars. And after a couple of weeks in jail, maybe we should forget we have them in jail and let them rot and die, because they're dead wood, and worse than dead wood, they're diseased wood. They're nothing but bad news. So enough of the video. Oh dear. There'd be cars in the driveway. Ooh, that means I have to deal with people. Yuck. Alright, I'm back. Wet, cold, sneezy. But anyway, so anyway, economy stuff, right? Money. The point of the whole thing is the engine of an economy is basically you want to have everybody who can work working. You want to have people being as productive as they can. You want them to have just enough incentive. I mean, not so much that they're desperate and will kill themselves for their job, but you do want people to be productive. So you need to incentivize the act of work, give people reason to improve themselves so they can make more money, so they can have more stuff, and all that kind of crap. But yeah, you want to optimize all of our efficiencies by creating these incentives. Now over time, let's say when we landed on America, there was an automatic surplus. I mean, the land had value. You stole it from the Indians, so you had beads, you had different things that had value. And so all of that is still was commerce. All assets, all things are, in a sense, value, like work. So you have things that have value in them because they took work to make, and you have the value of the work itself. And those are the commodities that you have to incentivize people to work. They're the carrots that you can place in front of society and say, do some work, society. Here's your carrot that you can get if you do it. Here's some contract paper that guarantees you a piece of this pie if you'll do the work. And so theoretically, you want to have as much of that incentive carrot stuff around as possible. And sometimes you want to just make fake carrots and just promise people fake carrots because their productivity in the long run will more than pay back the debt of the carrot. So in the good time, you'll collect so much extra surplus that you'll be able to spend dollars in the future on extra work and get through the lean times. Hard times, lean times, you want to balance it all out. And that's what currency can allow you to do. But the rich won't allow you to do that, because they're always going to demand their profit. You know, they play the same game, the same tune, no matter what the economy's doing. If it's doing good, they want a tax cut. If it's doing bad, they want a tax cut. And they're not going to, you know, whatever, could do anything to contribute to creating those real incentive carrots. They're going to do it with a whip. They're not going to get the best out of people through incentives. They're going to get the all they can suck out of people with a stick. They're going to scare them and beat them into being productive, so they can just steal profit off of it, steal more surplus, claim more ownership. So right now, you know, 3 or 5% of the population on Earth claims ownership of 95% of all this stuff. They claim they own it, and they claim they have a right to rent it to us users of it, us consumers of it. Yeah, at a profit to them. So it's basically just monarchy. We're back to the beginning, back to the bad old days, effectively. Most of our labor is for a capitalist profit, not for human progress, not for the betterment of our lifestyles. It's all a bunch of rackets and crookery and small print and game playing, just to steal the money out of our pocket, not to earn it out of our pocket. Yeah, it's just an awful, stupid, idiotic system. We don't need the owners, all we need is the workers. It's just that simple. They're everything. And the owners are nothing but a waste. So yeah, I said that already. So that's where the beginning started. That's where the video started. And now that's where it ended. I think it's ended. Yeah, I need to feel better than this. I am just not all together here. So yeah, till the next time, and such and so forth, and whatnot. Oh, sorry. Yeah, this backlight is a real problem with this camera. Ow! You know, when light's behind you, while it's in front of you ain't too good either. I don't know. It's not that bad, I guess. Never mind. Just complaining. Stupid weather. It rained on me before, of course. And then the sun comes out. Just irritating. Timing. Anyway. Damn it. Stop saying that. Until next time. And such and so forth and whatnot. Okay, there, I'm done. I said the salutation. I should hit the button. But my reflexes aren't doing it. Come on, brain, hit the button. Okay, just stop. Till next time. Have a lovely evening and such.